first of all, thank you all for inviting me. Thanks for having me out today to talk to you. So I hope it gets some value from it. But I'm Jenean Hampton. I'm the 57th Lieutenant Governor of Kentucky. I've been on the job a little more than a year and a half, a little bit longer than a year and a half. I think I'm good without the, Can you guys hear me okay? Yes. If my voice starts to drop, just let me know. But I think this room is small enough, and there's, it's a small group, so I think, I don't think I need a mic today. We were elected. I was elected along with Matt Devin in November of 2015, and sworn in a month later. That was kind of a whirlwind. I just visited some relatives who were unable to come to the inauguration, so I was describing the whole day and how surreal it was to find myself in the back, sitting in the back of the convertible, waving to a parade route. So I live. So a little bit about myself. I live in my home is in Bowling Green. My husband and I live there. We've been married for 17 years, and I have 2 grown stepchildren from his first marriage. I have 2 cats, and my mom lives with us. We moved around in Detroit. She will be 90 years old next month. My mom. She is a huge part of the reason that I stand here today as Lieutenant Governor. Really, I give her credit. I give God credit, but I give her credit too for really just setting an example for me and my 3 sisters. We grew up in poverty in Detroit. I'm sorry.
Can I interrupt you really quickly? Can we get you on mic for the recording?
Oh,
okay.
Okay, sure.
Does that work?
Yeah, we can do that. Sure. Okay. All right. So this is more for the recording. All right. I'm trying to remember to talk and to speak into. And so I give my mom a lot of credit for who I am. If you haven't read my story, my 3 sisters and I, we grew up poor in Detroit. My mom was left a single mom after divorce when I was young, and because she didn't get past high school, her options were kind of limited, and she couldn't see her way to, either finish school and do something different. And I'm not blaming her at all. I don't want anybody to misunderstand me. I'm not criticizing her at all. Sometimes when you're in a hole, you can't see your way how to climb out unless somebody maybe helps you. But she did set some really great examples for me and my sisters, and as a result, all 4 of us are the first in our family to go to college. All 4 of us are. And so many of you may know that I worked my way through college because my parents couldn't afford it. I have an industrial engineering degree. I'll tell you, it took me 9 years to get my degree. And part of that reason it took me so long was I was working my way through school, but the other reason was I suddenly changed curriculums about 2 years in. I don't recommend you do that. In fact, if you're in high school or even if you're starting college, please take advantage of your guidance counselors and help them help you figure out what it is you like to do. Now, I'm here to tell you that even some of you, how many of you know exactly what you want to do in your career? Exactly what you want to do. Yeah, okay, that's about right. Sometimes about a third of the students raise their hands. So to you, I'll say, don't be shocked or surprised that that changes 2 or 3 or 4 times in your lifetime. And to the rest of you, it's okay if you don't know. It really is. But you got to get started doing something, right? You got to. When you turn 18, now you're an adult, and when I turned 18, I thought, wow. I thought, okay, no one owes me a job, no one owes me to pay for my college. What do I do? But then as soon as I realized the magnitude of the opportunities that are out there, it became, whoa, what do I do? You have to pare down. The opportunities are so great. But I don't know how I missed that I should have been in engineering school from day one, because my mom will tell me, my friends tell me, my neighbors tell me that I used to tinker with stuff. I used to take stuff apart, put it back together. I remember that, the joy in figuring out how stuff works. if any of you know, if any of you love doing that, you have the makings of an engineer. So, and I'm not blaming my guidance counselors, my high school guidance counselors. I just didn't take advantage of their you know, what they were offering. So I would encourage you to talk to not only your counselors but the adults around you. If you see someone who's doing a job and you're interested in how they got there or what's required, talk to them, ask them questions. You know, folks are more than happy to mentor young people or anyone who's interested in what they do. But hopefully it won't take you as long to get your degree as it took me to get mine. But I will tell you, so if you've read my career, you know, so I worked for GM for a while. I joined the Air Force after I got my degree. I served for 7 years as a computer systems officer. And then I worked for 19 years in the corrugated packaging industry, or cardboard boxes to the layperson. And none of that was planned. Absolutely none of it was planned. I didn't set out from high school saying, I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this. And some people do have their lives planned, and I would tell you, if any of you here are like that, don't be disappointed if your plan takes a different path. It's really okay. It really is okay if you go off your track. Sometimes it might be God trying to nudge you into some place. And when I look back in my career, I can see His hand moving me along and equipping me for this, and who knows what's beyond this. I couldn't see it at the time, couldn't have told you at the time, but I can see it now, and I really give Him credit for. I'm really amazed at how He has moved in my life. But I had a 4th grader ask me, and so I always do Q&A. So we're going to do questions. So if you have questions, write them down, be thinking about them. So I'm going to talk a little bit, and I'm going to take your questions, and we'll go from there. But I had a 4th grader. 4th and 5th graders, brutally honest. They're just curious about everything. But asked me, why did you go to work in something as boring as boxes? And I had to explain that to me, working in that industry was not boring at all. In fact, I got started as a supervisor out on the production floor, and I was in manufacturing, of course, remember my degree is industrial engineering. One of the things I love about industrial engineering, you could go so many different directions with that degree. You could go the programming side. There's a computer component. There's a process. It's process improvement. But a lot of folks go to work in hospitals. Some people go to work in the IT industry. A lot of people go to work in manufacturing, and I love the manufacturing part. So starting out on the floor as a supervisor, I was in heaven. It was the perfect job. I was a machine supervisor. But here's the thing. Here's what happened. I was so curious about how a factory worked that I just started poking around in other departments. Because before I was hired in, so this was my machine, right? And this was somebody else's machine. And everybody stayed in their lane, and nobody talked, and in fact some departments were bumping heads. And I was just curious what they were doing over on that machine with the materials that my machine made. And I was curious, for example, in shipping, how were they shipping our products? How do you load a trailer so that you maximize the space in that trailer? Because you don't want to ship empty space. And then how do you schedule the routes so that you're not backtracking? You still need to get the orders there when the customer wants it there. But you really don't want that driver to be backtracking because you're wasting gas. And so that is called the science of logistics. And let me tell you, places like UPS pay very well if you are a logistics expert or have a logistics degree. So I was curious how the orders came into the plant, and I was curious how they scheduled the machines, and along the way I'm tweaking processes, and a funny thing happened. They started promoting me. And ultimately I made plant manager. So boring? Not at all. Not at all. Absolutely not. And so the question that many people have, and because I know this question will come up, how did I go from that whole career track to this? And I will tell you again, it was not planned. The short answer for me is God. The long answer is God, but you want the details, I'm sure. And I will tell you that as I was working in the box industry in Bowling Green, and I just got started, I got interested in what our government was doing. I actually got involved through the Tea Party, and I was interested in what policies and laws and pieces of legislation both they were doing in Frankfurt as well as Washington, D.C. And how many of you would be comfortable right now just picking up the phone and calling your representative or your senator or your congressman and asking them a question? Show of hands, who would be comfortable doing that? Oh, very good, very good. More than normal. Most people say, whoa, I don't know if I could do that. Well, you know what? You should be comfortable doing that because elected officials work for you. I work for you, not the other way around. I work for you. I have roughly 4.5 million bosses, the people of Kentucky. And you know, it was really an eye-opener when I was working in the Tea Party because there were some elected officials, and I won't name them, who when you contacted them, they made you feel like you were bothering them. You know, why are you bothering me asking questions? Well, you don't have a right to ask a question. And if you ask me a question, I will answer. You may not like my answer. You may disagree with my answer. But we don't have to be argumentative, and we don't have to be nasty about it. But, you know, I think asking questions is the core of a lot of things. In fact, one of the books I'm reading now, it's a really short book, and I highly recommend it. It's called Wait, What? And it's about asking questions and how asking questions just helps you remain engaged in the world. It keeps you curious about the world and engaged in the world and want to improve it. You really want to improve, because if you're not asking questions, then really you're just, and I found a lot of people had checked out of the process, the political process, and who can blame them, you know, watching the vitriol, right? You probably just want to live your life and, you know, mow your lawn and get your kids where they need to go, and you're watching all this over here. Anybody ever watch Australian football? Anybody ever watch Australian football? It's kind of cool. They have a rule. It's the play doesn't stop. They're up and down, and it's no padding too, so it's really exciting. It's kind of like American football, but the play doesn't stop. So when I remember watching a game one time, and a fight breaks out over here, and the rest of the team is still playing. They're down the field. You know, they're moving the ball. They have to keep moving. So, you know, you have to keep moving. Sometimes you have to just ignore all this stuff over here and just keep moving. And so I really got involved in politics through the Tea Party back in 2009, 2010. I remember the first rally I went to. I remember Senator Rand Paul was there. Well, he wasn't a senator then, but he points to the rally in Bowling Green as actually all the rallies that were held across the nation in April of 2009 as spurring him to want to run. And so how I met Matt Bevin was actually through my Tea Party activity. I was part of a group that vetted him when he was thinking about running for the Senate. And sometimes I see shocked faces when I tell people that I vetted Matt Bevin. They say, wait, let me get this straight. You interviewed Matt Bevin? Yes, I did. Part of our committee actually, we came up with a pool of questions, 6 pages long. We investigated his life online. We had him do a pre-questionnaire, and we interviewed him for 3 solid hours. Now, you may not be able to do that with every potential person you're thinking of supporting, but I would say ask some questions. You know, ask questions. It really does keep you engaged, and so I will tell you that I've never wanted to run for office, but it was really a God thing that got me into this. It really was. I was praying for guidance on what to do in my career, and I was hearing run for office, and I couldn't believe it. I ignored it for months because I had a whole list of things. You know what I wanted to do the day that Matt Bevin called me and asked me to be his running mate? I wanted to program apps for a phone. and I was trying to figure out, because I've programmed a lot in my life, you know, just even though I don't have a computer science degree, I've taken a lot of courses. I could probably pick up a language again today very easily, overnight. And the day Matt called, I was trying to figure out, I wanted to figure out how to do that without sitting in a classroom. I'm so envious of you guys doing websites, I really am. Because I really want to get back to that. And maybe that's on my list. But the day he called and told me he was running for governor, and asked me if I would be his running mate, what would you guys do if one of your friends called you one day out of the blue? Yeah, I see some faces, and that's probably the face I had when he called. I couldn't believe he said what I thought he said. I asked him for a day to pray on it, but you know what? Before I hung up, I think I knew my answer. I knew the answer because I was flashing back to something else that had happened, and I'll tell you this real quick. Many of you may know that it was a four-way race on the Republican side when we ran, but when I had actually decided that I was going, before he'd even called me, I was going to support somebody else who was in the race, Jamie Comer, who was the ag commissioner. And I was going to tell him this at the end of 2014. He had a fundraiser in Bowling Green. The day before that fundraiser, I lost my voice. Completely lost my voice. Still mad about not being able to go to that fundraiser because I just missed the whole process. And you know, it was shortly after that Matt called me. And and I knew when I was flashing back, I had Matt on the phone, and I was flashing back to that incident, and in my head, I thought that was just all God, and he was just saying, slow down, Missy, I got other plans for you. I wrote some notes down. Somebody asked me once upon a time, let me put this down a second so I can go out. Yeah. But somebody asked me, what are the elements of success? If I had some elements of success, what are those elements of success? So I thought about it. I thought about my career, went through my career, trying to write down, you know, some lessons. So here are some lessons, just real quick. Number one, like I said, be inquisitive. I have been inquisitive my entire life. When I worked for General Motors, at lunchtime, I was a computer operator for GM. People think I worked the line. But at lunchtime, I would go wander the halls and see what they were doing in the other offices. You know, I got to go out to visit the plants, and it was just really, you know, interesting. And again, people want to tell you what they do if you ask them. You know, what do you do? How are you doing it? They're really, and they really want to mentor you and help you. So that's number one, be inquisitive. Number two, be educated. And I don't mean just going to school, I mean in and out of a classroom. I'm a long time, I'm always learning something, always. Wherever I was stationed, wherever I lived, I would just drop into the local community college and take a programming class, and take a language I didn't know. I got interested in business, so I started taking accounting. I got interested in marketing of all things because I'm really curious in how we are marketed to. So I took some beginning marketing courses and started at a community college, and then actually that's what got me back to grad school. When I got my MBA, I actually majored in marketing. So, you know, school is never out. As long as you're breathing, school is never out, never ever. So always be learning, be improving something. I'm an avid reader to this day. I mean, there's no age limit. I'm 59. I'm 59 years old. I'm still learning things. And I mean, whatever the approach is, whether I'm cooking. At one point, I was trying to figure out how to make the perfect loaf of crusty bread. And I found a book called The Bread Bible. And they talked about, you know, measuring your, there were whole chapters on flours and liquids and technique, it was so much fun just learning how to do that, to come up with something. At one point, this was a few years ago, I got interested in songs and the rhyming patterns and how people how do you come up with a topic and write a whole song about something? Write some verses that make sense. You know, I love CeeLo Green, and a song, but I figure anybody who can rhyme, what did he rhyme? He rhymed, I'm trying to remember this, I'm trying to keep it clean here, so in this one particular song, but he rhymed Atari, Ferrari, and sorry in a cohesive paragraph, and I thought, wow, that's just genius, that's just simply genius. So I actually, at one point, so what do? I buy a book on how do you write lyrics, and they talked about rhyming patterns and all kinds of things, and I thought, okay, well, how do I know what to write about? But you know what it forced me to do? You know what I started doing? I started paying attention to the things that people would say, the things I was hearing. I started going back in my life and thinking of incidents. I remember a time when I visited Sedona. My husband and I went to Sedona, Arizona. I remember we were at this outdoor market, and suddenly this rainstorm came up, and everybody ran for cover. And we all ran to the store, except for this one little boy who was about this tall. He just stayed out in the rain and danced. He's out there, and he turned his face up, and I just remember, wow, there's a lesson here, because as adults, we forget to be joyous. We lose that joy. And so all these, fast forward all these years later, when I'm looking for stuff to write about, I actually started keeping a journal online as I thought of snippets of things. I actually wrote a song about that called Rain Dance. And it's a lesson for life. Dance in the rain. Dance, remember to dance. When others run for shelter, you dance in the rain. And I mean that in a metaphorical sense. So that was part of my educational journey. Just always doing something, always learning something. So that's the second thing. Mentorship. Somewhere along the line, you will have an opportunity to mentor others, but as you're getting started, others will mentor you. Look for those people who nourish you. I got to thinking about the people in my life. My programming teacher in high school, Mr. Weitzman, I used to bug him for on day one of class, I would bug him for all the coding assignments, knock all of those out in 2 weeks, and then ask for extra credit. And he mentored me, and he actually helped me get my job at General Motors. He did. And so there are people like that. There's in the box plant, in the box industry, Teresa Bayshore, who was the plant manager, who's now a regional plant manager. She could run the company if she wanted to. She really doesn't want to rise any higher. But she was the one who gave me all these opportunities in the box industry and recognized my talent and recognized my interest. And she was sending me to classes and training and getting me out to other plants and getting me talking with other managers and seeing what's going on. And she was a mentor to me. She was. And so find those people throughout your lifetime. They're out there. They will be out there. Be flexible. For those of you, again, who have plans for your life, life is not, I can guarantee you, life's not going to go the way you planned. It simply isn't. You may get a job offer that you didn't expect. Consider it, especially if you think, and this is what I tell younger people especially. Let me ask you this, how many of you can see yourself as maybe a governor or mayor or somewhere serving in public life? How many of you can see, show of hands, how many of you can see yourself doing that? Okay, that's about the number, that's about the percentage that I usually get. Well, hats off to you, because if someone had told me when I was your age that I would someday be helping to run a state, I wouldn't have believed it. I really wouldn't have believed it. And the reason I say that is, if I was sitting where you're sitting, you have some doubt about your own abilities. But I'm here to tell you that each and every one of you is capable of way more than you think. Way, way, way more than you think. And you may not see it now. You may not see it in 5 years. You may not even see it in 20 years. But I'm here to tell you that you are. And you may get an opportunity in your lifetime. You may get an offer to do something that is so big. Maybe it won't be as big as being lieutenant governor, because that was a huge thing. But my belief is this: if God puts opportunity in front of you, He's doing it for a reason, and you're ready for it, whether you think you are or not. So just remember, you are capable of way more than you but you have to be flexible though. You may consider a career change that is just so different from what you've been doing. It's okay. It's really okay. I've noticed over the years, even in the military, we drilled for war, right? I was with AWACS. You guys know the plane with the dome on top. If you don't know what I'm talking about, it's in the very first Transformer movie, about 45 minutes in. They call it a strike package, and they call it AWACS. That is an actual AWACS jet, actual crew. They actually show the inside, and it's kind of exciting. I just love it's the actual equipment. I know they're now upgrading them, so I don't know what the new ones look like. But it's really exciting. But that's what I did. I was a software tester in the Air Force for AWACS, and we always drilled stateside for an event. Well, I was sent to Desert Storm. AWACS were in Desert Storm, and we quickly realized that some of the rules we had stateside, some of the procedures we had stateside, just didn't fly. And so we changed some rules, we threw others out, and made up some new ones. We came up with new procedures. So you have to be flexible. Wherever you are, just be flexible. Be mission focused. The one thing that I probably have been throughout my lifetime is, even though I didn't call it, I didn't think about it that way in my head, is to be mission focused. Now in the military, obviously you're focused on the mission. The Air Force has a mission, fly, fight, win, and everybody else, everyone who works in the military works, no matter what their job is, their ultimate goal is to support that mission. But you know, it's the same thing for example, in the box plant. The goal of the plant that I worked in was to get boxes out of the door, and to get them out the door so that the order was good the first time, so it didn't have to come back. We wanted to get the orders there on time, when the customer wants them there. So that was, I got really good at helping the people that I was coaching and supervising to be mission focused. Like, listen, we have a mission. Here's my machine. Our machine makes a material. That material is used somewhere else in the plant. So our mission is to make sure that our materials, our output is good the first time, and we get better at it. So just be mission focused wherever, in all aspects of your life. That has helped me tremendously. Maybe you have some personal goals. When I went back to school to get my MBA, I mapped out the entire course map to do it in 3 years, because my school, the University of Rochester, was really good at telling you, okay, these are the requirements to get this minor, to get this minor, to get this minor. I actually had 3 minors, and this is when these courses will be offered, so you knew and you could plan. Here's the prerequisites. And so I actually mapped it out before I even set foot in the school, the entire schedule, and because if I missed one, then it meant I would have to wait to take the next class, and maybe I wouldn't end up with that minor, but I did it in 3 years. So just be mission focused, it just helps. This one is probably the most important. In fact, I'll come back to that one, because that's really the most important. I'll say this, life is not fair. I've heard this, we've been hearing a lot of talk about fairness, but you know what, life is not fair. Some people are born to wealthy parents. Some people are born to parents who have nothing. So we're all dealt a hand. Each one of us is dealt a hand, but here's the beauty of living in the United States of America, best nation on earth. The hand you are dealt is not static. Your hand will change over your lifetime, largely based on what you do, with your time. Your most valuable asset is your time. How are you spending your time? So you can change that hand. So I was born to 2 parents who, blue collar, but then after the divorce, now suddenly single mom, welfare. I didn't have a lot. We didn't have a car. We didn't have a washing machine. Some years we didn't have a TV set. I wore hand-me-downs through high school. So you would think, okay, there's my hand, I'm stuck here, but that's the beauty, you're not stuck there. So I decided to take full advantage of school. I'm in school. There's dropping out, not an option for me. Especially when I learned about slavery in Detroit in the 1960s. They decided to teach Black American history, and a deep dive into Black American history. So we learned about all these wonderful figures like Benjamin Banneker and Phyllis Wheatley, but they took a deep dive into slavery too. And first of all, I was stunned when I learned that it was illegal at one time to teach Black people to read and write. And I pondered why that might have been. I think the short answer is ignorant people are easier to control. But knowing that, just knowing that, there was no way I was dropping out of school. In fact, I love school. And I was going to take full advantage of every educational opportunity I had. Learning that the one that got me was slaves did not get to take advantage, to enjoy the fruits of their own labor, let's say that. They were not in control of their day. I want my days to count. I want full control of as much of the fruits of my labor as possible. I do. And so that kind of colored me, but I opted to go to school, and it's not easy to go to school when you're working. It's not. It would be best to just do 4 years and go full time and not have to worry about working. But that's not the hand I was dealt. But I wasn't going to dwell on that. I didn't dwell on that at all. But my hand has changed and improved over time because of the things I've been doing. Largely some educational things, but maybe educational on and off. But play the hand you're dealt. Play the hand you're dealt, because your hand is not static and you can make it better depending on what you do. And so the last thing I would say is you've got to have hope. There's got to be. You have to have hope that things could be better. I never, ever thought, never, ever believed that I was stuck in Detroit. Never. I never did. Now, I wish I could say I had faith in God at that point, but I did do some bad experiences in the church we went to, and so I had decided that the church thing was not for me, but in hindsight, I can see that God had his hand on my shoulder the whole time. But you have to believe that things can be better. You have to believe that. Because if you don't believe that, you'll never work on improving yourself. And so, I believe in the promise of America. I believe in the American dream. But probably bigger than all that, I just believe that God makes each and every one of us. We are wonderfully and fearfully made, and we're talented. And the sad thing I see a lot of is that many people don't even attempt to discover what those talents might be. At least attempt to find out what those talents are, and move through your life with joy. And don't let anybody steal your joy. It's so, there's a lot of people who would they'll just suck the joy right out of your life. Don't let them. And sometimes those people might be your family members. I hate to say that, but I just visited some relatives in Texas, and just don't let anybody steal your joy. I'll just leave it at that, okay? So that's those are the basic 6 lessons. So I think I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to take your questions. Let me see how we're doing on time. Okay, so we got 30 minutes for questions. I can answer anything you. Yes, ma'am.
What are some of the hardships you faced due to your race, and how did you overcome them?
Hardships due to my race. Okay, now I get this question a lot, and it's hard for me to answer that question, and I'll tell you why. So one of my influences when I was younger was Martin Luther King Jr., and I'm old enough to remember when he was still alive. I was 10 the year he was killed, but I remember something that he said that was really profound. And you've all heard the quote. He wanted his kids to be judged based not on the color of their skin, but by the content of their character, right? You've all heard that quote. Well, I remember hearing him say that because his kids, his daughters especially, they kind of looked like me. They had braids that stuck out to the side, and they had the poofy dress on going to church. And so as a kid, again, I pondered why he would have to say that. And I knew why. You know, I knew the civil rights movement. I see footage of the marchers, the hoses being turned on them. But here's how I internalized what he said. For me, it meant not only could I expect not to be judged based on my skin color, it meant I couldn't judge others based on theirs. And what that did for me was open up a whole world of people who can be my friends, who can be my mentors, who can be my role models. You often hear that, you know, black people we don't have enough role models who look like us. You can learn from anyone. So I have moved through my life, I won't say colorless, but I don't know how else to put it. I haven't focused on color. So if I've had hardship, I am less likely to attribute those hardships to my skin color than to other things. And in fact, I would say because of my view, I've taken advantage of opportunities, whereas another person might have said, oh, I'm not sure I can do that because I'm black, or because whatever, because there's white people over there. I even heard somebody where I visited last week with family members. I went to Bible study, and we were discussing something, and this one lady said she had to work up the courage to take a job outside of the black community because she was uncomfortable working with white people. And I thought, oh, wow. I mean, I just can't even fathom that, because to me, people are just people, and I mean, they just are. All of you are just people with interesting stories. All of you, and don't think that my story is any more interesting than your personal stories. All of you have a personal story, or you're just starting your personal story. You're just starting to build your personal story. And so the hardships due to skin color, I honestly can't point to any. I really can't. And I know my skin color is focused on in this arena because I'm the first black person to hold statewide office in the state of Kentucky. And that was one of the first questions the media gave me when Matt and I registered. They said, if you win this, you'll be the first person to hold statewide office. And although I actually didn't know that, and that's interesting, but I think it's more interesting that we can get Matt better in the governor's chair. So, I'm really hard pressed to think of times when there's been adversity based on skin color. So I'm sorry. Not any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
What is your job to do on a day-to-day basis?
Oh, that's a great question. I get this one too. I get this question a lot too. In case you didn't hear, is basically what is a lieutenant governor's job, right? What do I do? And if you don't know, don't feel bad, because I didn't know either. When Matt asked me to be his running mate, I had to look it up. And you know where you go to look it up? You go to the Constitution, the Kentucky Constitution, because it has some job duties in there. If you don't have a copy of the Kentucky Constitution, you can get one for free through the trying to remember the LREC, I think it is. I'm trying to remember but then you can get them free. Just go to the state website. You can find the publications company or department. And so I looked it up, and I love these. If you get the small one, it's actually indexed. So I go to Lieutenant Governor, and it turned out there's not much required. You could probably compress the required duties into maybe a week, a month. There's boards and commissions that I sit on. So, but what it's allowed me to do, because it's so non-defined, it's allowed me to define it with Governor Bevin's blessings. So, typical day, I may be out talking to students like you all. In fact, when school is in, I will probably resume speaking to schools. I have been to 76 schools in a little over a year and a half. We've estimated I've spoken to about 35,000 students. It's a priority. I'm asked to come and share my personal story. I may be doing something entrepreneurship related. I started a contest, the first annual Lieutenant Governor's Entrepreneurship Challenge, a basically Shark Tank for high schoolers. And we gave away $80,000 in scholarship money to high schoolers. It was pretty cool. But I started that. So we're doing it for the second year too. Got more donors on board, got judges on board, universities, we lighted up the universities to host, so a really cool thing. And so I get to work on entrepreneurship issues, aerospace and aviation, which is Kentucky's largest export. Most people don't know that. Got to work on that. I started a group to help the players in that arena just network and grow that. Do you guys know that at Morehead State University has a world-class space science program? Do you guys know that? You can, if you go, 4-year degree, you learn how to build these little 4-inch cube satellites. It's really cool. In fact, I toured in 2015 during the campaign, and I was so excited. As I was going to the car, I'm texting Matt Bellin, and I said, I'm really sorry I have to drop out because I need to get this degree. I'm so excited about this degree. It's one of only 5 programs in the nation, and they're well known outside of Kentucky, and most people don't know that. But the aerospace and aviation industry in Kentucky is booming. It's just growing, and they're looking. It's one of the reasons I talk about STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, is because they are looking for those people in those arenas. They're looking for people with those skills. So I get to do that. I get to work on, let me think of some of the extraneous things. If it's anything to do with kids, anything to do with the military, anything to do with science, technology, engineering, and math, but also manufacturing, because I love manufacturing. I get to, I'm invited to come and tour plants, which is, wow, I would do that for free, seriously. I love this job so much, I would just about do it for free, because it's helping to improve Kentucky and getting out and around and talking. So no 2 days are alike for me. There's some planning, scheduling, and I just love it. I really love it. I do. Yes, ma'am.
I know you said you love your job, but is there any part that might stress you out or you don't love as much? And if so, how do you kind of push past it or make it more enjoyable?
Okay, so the part that I least enjoy, I have one regret about taking this job. It is that I don't see my family as much. We opted not to move to Frankfort. Again, I live in Bowling Green. My mom was with us. And so generally I'm in Frankfort during the week, go home on the weekends. And every minute I'm away from home is one less minute with my mom. And remember I said she'll be 90 years old next month. So every minute with her is precious. It really is. Let alone my husband, but especially my mom. It really is. So I try to, when I'm there at the house, I try not to get distracted, by the phone, by the internet, by TV, by all this other stuff. If she wants to go someplace, if she wants to go to the grocery store, which, I have to pack my patience when she goes to the grocery store because she'll be in the produce section for an hour. So it's gonna, I know it's a time commitment, but again, I think that's my only regret with this job. I was going to say the long days, but actually I've even lost a sense of, I've completely forgotten, when you have a 9-to-5 job or a job with regular hours, you get to the end of the day and go, ooh, we got time to go home. Or you get to Friday and go, man, I'm glad it's Friday. I have lost all sense of that. My days can start as early as 5 in the morning or earlier, depending on where we have to drive to, and go late at night. Because a lot of times I have something this evening. I have a banquet this evening. I'm speaking to some people. And so my days can be really long, but it's all good. It's really all good. So again, I think the only regret I have is the loss of time. I won't even get to the media. I wish they would stop with the misquoting, but there you go. But I have no control over that. So. That's the only thing. Yes, ma'am.
And based on your response to young ladies, this might not be in the context.
Go ahead.
Political leanings aside, I deeply respect your fearlessness and braveness to go against the obviously could be said about any political group, but
Okay, so her question is about, basically your question is about being fearless. I'll answer the question. I'll go back to my childhood because I tell this story a lot. When I was a kid, I was mocked for, it wasn't bullying, but I was mocked for getting good grades, for speaking the King's English well, for reading a lot, for listening to music that was not by black artists, because I guess if you're black, you should only listen to artists that are black, okay? Now, I found this all very, very baffling when I was a kid, and I remember thinking, I've never said this out loud, but I remember wondering, at what point in my life do I get to just be Jenean, with my own likes and dislikes and not have to explain it to anyone? And you know what? I had the answer. I asked myself the question and I had the answer. Because I knew that the Constitution, which basically is God, but the Constitution gives individuals the right to chart our own paths. And so I knew that all these people who were coming at me with an opinion about the stuff I was doing or listening to or whatever, I could just tune them out. They simply didn't matter, so I tuned them out. And in hindsight, I really think that was God just forging me for what was to come, because fast forward, I think you hit the nail on the head. You know, if you're black and conservative, black and in the Tea Party, whoa, what's that about? Because apparently, if you're black again, you're supposed to be in this box. You're supposed to be a Democrat. You're supposed to be, well, I'm not supposed to be anything. I'm Jenean. And I have my own beliefs. And so I'm conservative, but I choose to be a Republican because their platform most closely aligns with my values. And you can disagree with that. I'm okay I'm not mad at you if you disagree with that. I'm really not. But I have a problem if you come in and you're yelling at me, or you're constantly, nitpicking because you think I should be in this box. I'm not going to be in a box. I'm not. God gives each and every one of us free will. And we can do what we want. Each of us can do what we want. This is the beauty. Now, there's consequences for some actions, and we have to recognize that for certain actions there's consequences. But I am so firm in my core beliefs, and they have served me well. I discovered Dave Ramsey when I moved to Kentucky in 2003, and wow, he was saying radical stuff like a 15-year mortgage, or even, whoa, pay your house off. What is that about? Paying cash for a car. But let me tell you what true independence is. It's when you don't owe anyone a dime, a single dime. Listening to Dave, I'm driving around as a sales rep, and I'm listening to him. We were fine. We just had the mortgage, and we paid our credit card off every month. But we had money left over, and I kept telling my husband we should pay extra on the mortgage. And first couple of times he said no. The third time I said we're doing it. And you know what? If I got a bump, you start seeing that number go down. When you really look to see how much interest you pay on a mortgage, it just didn't make any sense. So every spare penny I got, I'm paying it on the principal, directly on the principal. We paid our house off in 5 years. And then later, when I lost my job, guess what? It wasn't an emergency at all. And I was able to take my time and pray and say, and ask God, what should I do next? He took me in a completely different direction. I was not expecting to run for office, but it wasn't a fire. So if someone wants to argue with my beliefs, I can say, listen, here's where I'm at. I'm in a good place. I have friends of all colors, all nationalities. Love it. I can speak to anyone easily, be at ease. Maybe because I'm interested in them. I don't know. I wouldn't. If I'm fearless, that doesn't come from me. Again, that's God. But you just have to know who you are. Know who you are, and don't let people get get you off track, because again, you're gonna meet those people who are they're so busy in your business, they're ignoring their own business. Those people are out there, they really are, and you have to, don't let them get you off track, don't let them steal your joy. And if you believe, if you have an opposite opinion of mine, I'm okay with that, I really am. But I've had some of the best conversations with people whose opinions and beliefs are 180 degrees from my own, but you know why it was a great conversation? Because we were actually having a conversation. It wasn't a Twitter thing where, they say something and then I snipe back, and then, you cannot have a conversation in social media. You can't do it. Get off of social media and talk to each other. Just talk to each other. It's so much more rewarding, and you'll find you'll end up with friends who then you're not going to agree with them on everything, but you'll still be friends at the end of the day. So fearless, I wouldn't say that, but I'm just grounded. I'm grounded in faith, and I'm willing to share, my principles, my whatever helped make me successful. I'm willing to share that with anybody who's willing to listen. So, great question.
Can you explain your relationship with Mount Benton and how you guys work with each other?
Oh, okay. I love him. He's awesome. He's, in case you guys didn't know, he opened up the Speedway. It was sometime over the weekend, and first of all, he rappelled in on a chopper to bring the green flag on a Black Hawk helicopter. He choppers in, and then he drove the pace car. So that's our governor. So, if you're not from Kentucky, our governor is cooler than your governor. So there you go. But and again, we met. This is another thing. I first met him again through the vetting process, but it wasn't just a casual meeting. It was a process that allowed me to get to know him on a 360-degree basis. So I was so impressed with him at the end of that session as a Christian husband, father, yes, of my kids, he has my kids, as an entrepreneur, and I was just so impressed with him, and I was disappointed when he lost the Senate race. I'm still stunned when he asked me to be his running mate, though. So what we do is we kind of have our own. We kind of move in. I would say there's two different circles, and they intersect a little bit because he's got tons of events. I've got tons of events. I'm actually shocked at how in demand I am. But we do meet to talk about policy and tax policy and just see what's going on and what are you hearing, what are you seeing, what do we, just discuss what to do next. We have, there's regular cabinet meetings where all the cabinet members are there, but I have lunch with him once a month where it's just he and I and no staff. Because staffers change the conversation. Just he and I, no staff, just to connect, just to keep the connection going. So and I love his family, love his wife, his kids. It's a great relationship. He knows my husband. He knows my mom. Everybody calls her Miss Marie. I keep thinking I have to put a Facebook page up for her so you can see what she's wearing at church or something. But it's a great relationship. It really is. And I will tell you that if I thought he was wrong for Kentucky, I would have declined his offer. I didn't want to be in public that much. I didn't want that much to, if our values weren't meshed, they weren't alike, I would have declined the offer, frankly. But I was thrilled to be able to help him. I'm really blessed to be on his team. I really am. So it's a great relationship. And apparently, and it's good you asked that question, because I've learned that apparently it's unusual for the governor and the lieutenant governor to actually get along. It's really strange. Kentucky politics are really strange. So, although I'm finding that in some other states too, it's a little unusual for them to actually get along. So, great question. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
What is your most embarrassing moment that you've had?
In this position or just in general?
Just in general.
Most embarrassing. Now, I know I've had some, but I'm really hard pressed to think of the most embarrassing. And that may be a testament to how I look at negative things. You know, you just kind of move on. I just move on. Because I know I've had some. I know it. I just can't think of anything. I can't think of a thing. And I know it. I know there's been some. I know it. Wow. That's okay. I'll keep thinking about that. I'll keep thinking about that. Yes, ma'am.
Have you ever been scared to go into a different career?
Have I been scared to go into a different career? No, actually. Part of it for me is, again, I just find things, the best adjective I can use about something is that it's interesting. You know, I want life to be interesting. And you know, when I got the call from General Motors to be a computer operator, that's my first full-time job. It was 2 years out, about a year and a half out of high school. My first full-time job, and you know, this is like work. You know, you're going to work, and now you're working with people, and you're figuring out how work works, and it was interesting. There was new stuff to learn, and you know, and again, I'm poking around in other departments, I'm you know, if the IBM guy was there in the racks with the racks open, I'm looking over his shoulder trying to figure out what he's doing, you know, on the tech side of things. So that was all new for me. The Air Force was completely new. Boy, if you want to be thrown into a position where you're working with different people from, you know, every different state and the territories, and they all have different customs and likes and dislikes, and you know, join the military. Join the military. It gave me a true appreciation for working with so many different people. And again, you know, we were united by our uniform, but that was my first time outside of Detroit. I was in my late 20s. I had never even flown on a plane. It was my first plane ride, flying down to San Antonio to go to officer training school. And now suddenly I'm thrown in with all these people, and then once I finished officer training school, now I'm stationed with all these people, and I have it's a new job, new city, and I loved it. Absolutely loved it. And at one point I found I was friends with people who were so different from me. You know, the guy from Boston who loved sailing, and the free spirit from Colorado who was always in a convertible, no matter how cold it was, and you know, and the kid from Minnesota who was so proud that Bob Dylan was from Minnesota. You know, all these different people, and it was just cool. And again, very different. You know, and it could be scary, but for me it wasn't. And then when I went to the box industry, the way I got into that was when I got out of the military, companies were looking for officers, military officers, because they had such good luck with military officers just because of the responsibilities that they had in the military. I didn't know anything about the box industry. I never knew anybody. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know anybody who worked in it. So now, and I was actually hoping they brought me in for the second interview at the plant, because I just wanted to see the plant. And you know, and so now I found myself working in a union shop with, you know, people whose approach to work was very different than mine, and I had a blast just learning. So so this certainly was new. Don't think that I can, you know, when I got that call, I'm like, oh yeah, I can do that. Oh no, no, not at all, not at all. In fact, this is the second thing I run for. The first position I ran for was the State House in Bowling Green, and I lost that race, but I learned a ton of stuff. I learned to write radio ads. I learned to ask people for donations, which is really hard. You have to talk to complete strangers and make your case. Marshall volunteers, we went door to door. We visited over 10,000 doors in Bowling Green, in the Bowling Green area. I wrote mailers, just did a ton of stuff. So had I done that stuff before? No, not really. but you just dive in and learn it, and you just want to do a good job. If you just want to do a good job, you pick the skills up. You will. And so I won't say I've been ever afraid of moving into a different field. And so while this was certainly new, because I'm mission focused, my mission is to make Kentucky better. That's at the forefront. And everything else, and then to please God, and everything else falls into place. It really does. It really does. So, and again, I just figure if God puts me here, He's already equipped me with the skills to do a good job. So, I start from that premise and go from there. I think we have time. One more question?
Oh, question?
Oh, okay. Yes.
I was going to ask, both in your previous professional career and also in the field of politics, there was a pretty male-dominated field. So how have you as a woman been looked at differently, but also how have you overcome that and continue to make progress in your own right as a woman?
Well, and again, my answer there is similar to the question about skin color. For one thing, when you're in a field like computers or science, technology, engineering, and math, science and technology and engineering and math don't care about your gender. They don't care about your skin color. The compiler doesn't care what your sex is. It really doesn't. It's programming, and you get good at it or you don't. And so, who could argue with my programming skills? My programming skills were good. They just were. And so I've moved to, I'm always looking for work. I want my work to be interesting. And so I'm trying to think if there were times, I can remember in college, in my undergrad days, there were a couple of professors who didn't like the fact that there were women in their class. I know that for a fact. But it's math, so you can't argue. You can't argue, you can't diss me because, you can dislike me because I'm a woman, but you can't mark my answer wrong because it's either right or it's wrong. It's math. It's computer science, it's electronics or whatever it was. And so I just know why I'm there, and I believe, here's the other thing, I believe at my core I have just as much right to be there as someone else, and I'm not going to let anybody rub me away. I'm just not.
I have a follow-up question.
Okay.
Where do you think your confidence comes from? Where does your faith in yourself come from?
For God. I know that. I know that for a fact, and I'm making an effort this year as I get out to visit schools, to visit the alternative schools, because I noticed last year very often they would not be in the huge assembly of kids in the gym or the auditorium or whatever. And so I'm making an effort to make sure I reach those kids too. And it's a smaller group. Very often when I speak to them, it's a group maybe about this size, and their questions are very different. And I had one young lady ask me, she said, why do you attribute your success to God? Why isn't it you? Why isn't it all you? And I said, because I know it's not. I said, first of all, I know I didn't get to this position on my own volition because this wasn't even on my to-do list. And the orchestrations to have my path first crossed with that Bevins in the way that it did, and then to have us win a primary, a four-way, by 83 votes, by the way, ladies and gentlemen. 80. So if people tell you your vote doesn't count, don't believe them. Go vote. Go vote. Against all odds. Then we were told we couldn't win in the general election, and we did. They told us we were going to lose by 5, and we won by 9. And just the whole orchestration, almost everything in my background has prepared me for this job. To be able to, I worked in sales in the corrugated industry. When I got out of the military, the headhunter I worked with wanted to place me in sales, and I went, I couldn't do that job. I want manufacturing, and I did. But you know where I ended up in? Sales. I ended up in sales, and when you're in sales, you have to go talk to complete strangers to try to convince them that your company is the best company in the world to buy boxes from, right? Exactly, and it's a long, in the corrugated industry, it's a long process to do that, and it can be a little bit frustrating, but that even prepared me. Even that prepared me for being able to do this, to come and speak to complete strangers, without being nervous, and so I know that's not me. I don't attribute any of that to my own volition. I really don't. And here's the other reason I say this. So let me back up and tell you this God story. So in 2012, when I was working in the box industry, and I was doing my tea party, my civics activity in the evening, and I was frustrated. I started to get frustrated because my day job was starting to bleed over to my nighttime job. Not complaining, it's just the nature of the beast. There's still stuff you have to do when you get off the road. You got to do requests for quotes, you got to do samples, you got to write orders. There's things you have to do. And I was starting to get frustrated. I wasn't like what I was seeing out of either Frankfurt or Washington, and I was so frustrated. And I had heard someone say, stand where God needs you to stand. And so I prayed that prayer. And I think I shared this with you. I prayed that prayer. Lord, please help me know what it is I'm supposed to do. And the next morning, the very next morning, my boss called me in his office and told me that my position was being eliminated. And I just smiled because I had my answer. There was my answer. So, and that started me on the journey to this. It did. It really did. Because when I was ready to go back to work a few months later, I did something that I had never done in my entire career. I actually prayed for guidance on what to do next. And I couldn't believe the answer I was getting. I was like, this can't be right. I think I got the wrong person. Run for office. Okay, that can't be right. That can't be right. So I dove into the state house run, and I lost that race. And again, I learned a lot. And I said, okay, I'll just run another 2 years. This is a 2-year cycle. But before that happened, back home. So again, I think the dominoes were set up to get me here. So that confidence, and I pray every day, really. I do. I literally pray every morning, and sometimes during the day too, depending on what's going on. I just pray for guidance, and everything falls into place from there. It really does. So please don't attribute. Don't leave thinking that she's just so, she's just assured and fearless, and it comes from my faith, and it serves me well. It really does. So was that the last question?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you, lady. Thank you for answering.
Appreciate you being here so much. Like I told you this morning, we were all sitting here talking about your journey and your story, but I think that having you speak was valuable. You've given me a lot to think about. So before I started working with you guys this summer, I had the idea to do Empowered for about 2 years, but I never had the guts to do anything about it, about what I cared about it, what I was interested in. And it's been incredible to hear you talk about taking the next step and taking some risks and just looking forward without worrying so much.
And you may not have all the answers. When we started the Lieutenant Governor's Entrepreneurship Challenge, we brainstormed on what that would look like and how it would work. And I said, listen, let's just do rapid prototyping. Let's just get it rolling. We'll tweak it as we go along, and then we'll do lessons learned for next time. So, if you have an urge to do something, talk to some people, get some information, but you're not going to have complete information. You're not going to have everything you need to do to get rolling, but get started. And sometimes you'll be surprised at how things fall into place for you. So thank you. Thank you for this.
I really appreciate everything that you guys do every day. And thank you so much. Awesome. Okay, so I think we have lunch set up.